Hi, it's Anne here, and today's video is my 10th update for my Pan That palette project for 2022. So I'm doing a Pan That palette with both an eyeshadow palette and a face palette. I'm also doing like a monthly roulette thing where I'm picking palettes to use each month. Most of them are like a roulette. I've been picking one or two here and there along the way. So let's get into the Pan That palette portion. The eyeshadow palette that I have been struggling through. I shouldn't say struggling through. I mean, I like using the palette, but it's definitely not an easy palette to hit pan on, so it's not super satisfying in that aspect, is the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. But I say that, and we hit new pan. It's tiny, 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 tiny baby pan in Creme Brulee. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. It's right there, and that little guy right there. As I've said in previous months, I've been sort of focusing on this half of the palette. I've sort of jumped into this shade a little bit too. I combined sort of this matte with this matte now because this is kind of pretty warm and I want to neutralize it a little bit. And then I've been using these two shades together because I don't like I don't like yellowy golds on me, but then mixing it with the marzipan kind of gives it a yellowish, like fall kind of color for marzipan. So I don't mind it, but I really like the marzipan shade. I'm pretty sure, I'll put the photo up, the side by side. I'm pretty sure marzipan's going to show a bigger difference. I've been using that one quite a bit. I'm still working on that salted caramel, so hopefully I hit pan I think I'll hit pan by the end of the year. That dip is pretty big in it now. I think I'm pretty close, so I think I will hit pan in that one. But yeah, still just kind of focusing on this half. I have been using this shade a little bit too, Champagne Truffle. I was gonna say Champagne Toast. No, that is a Bath & Body Works scent. But yeah, for the most part, haven't really used these other shades, and I don't know if I'm gonna get around to it. So yeah, a little sad about that like it's just really hard to pan something and then use a collection as well. Like panning eyeshadow, it's hard. I'm just putting it out there. It is a hard thing to do, especially when you have a lot of palettes and a lot of eyeshadow like I do. And the face palette I'm working on is this shiny guy, which is the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit Volume 4. And I hit pan on this last month. I think the pan is expanding quite a bit. So you can see the pan is on. I don't know how well you can see that. Yeah, you can see the waffle. You can definitely see the waffle now. I feel like last update it looked suspect. It was hard to see, but you can definitely see it now. And the shade next to it, like when I look at them, like it's super flat. So it's really close to pan as well. The bronzer is also pretty flat. I could potentially hit pan on the bronzer by the end of the year as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I could do that. The blushes, again, I've used this blush actually a fair bit this past month because I feel like it works well. Like I've been wearing a lot more cool tone looks, and this is a bit more of a cool tone blush, especially compared to my Project Pan blush. Yeah, not really using this guy, and I don't really care for the highlight in this. Like I don't think the highlight really does anything. It's pretty womp for me. So this palette though, I am weighing this palette. I'm not weighing the eyeshadow palette because it's too heavy, but we'll do a weight at the very end. The last update for this project. So last month this palette was 135 grams, or sorry, 135.5 grams. It's now 135 grams, so that's a difference of 0.5 grams. In total, I've used 2.79 grams on this palette, so not too bad. These powders are pretty finely milled, so I find like a little kind of goes a long way, if that makes sense, especially if you're not wanting if you're just like a light touch person. Like I'm a fairly light touch person when it comes to makeup, and I think that's why I'm going through this pretty slowly compared to what I thought I would and compared to what I've seen other people go through those palettes. Like some people go through them really quickly. So those are the two palettes that I am panning. Now let's get into the palettes that I've used in the past month of October. And I've remembered to scooch over so I can put pictures over on the side. So in no particular order, the first palette I want to talk about is the Huda Beauty Nude Obsessions in the light version. And this palette's a nice palette. For me, what I like most is sort of the shimmery shades in this palette. I feel like it was nice to take the shimmery shades in this palette and pair it with the nudes in this palette, or like the mattes in this palette, because I feel like the mattes in this palette lean pretty pinky warm, and if I wanted to neutralize the look a little bit more, it was nicer to go in with like the Too Faced shadows. So I only took pictures of one look. I thought I took pictures of more. Maybe there's second picture somewhere. I feel like there was another look I took pictures of. This look was pretty much just like the light pink and these two shades in here, and that was it. So it was a pretty simple look. I don't know what video it is, but in one video I'm definitely wearing this shadow as like my main eyeshadow lid, or eyeshadow color. And then in another video I'm wearing this shade and I think this shade, like the two pink like shimmery shades on the lid with the Too Faced palette. So I got quite a bit of use out of this one. I feel like this actually is a good panning palette, except for the mattes I think would be hard, but the shimmers would definitely be easy to pan and easy to just like pair with other palettes and use as like an everyday type palette. I quite enjoy this palette. Next up is the Too Faced Razzle Dazzle Berry Eyeshadow Palette. I like the colors in this palette. I feel like I didn't use this one a whole lot. You can really only get two distinct looks out of this. Like, I mean, you can blend everything together, but you can get sort of like a pinker look and then a more purpley look. So I have one look. This palette smells so good though. Every time I open it, I'm like, that smells lovely. So I did one look that was mostly like the shades on this half. I didn't use like the purple looks at all. And again, a really nice, pretty, wearable look. This is a really interesting palette because the textures are kind of different. They're kind of mushy. And then I did a more intense look with like the purples, kind of leaning into like a deeper, more vampy look. And I really enjoyed this look. It's a really like much more intense look. Looks really good with my hair as well. I'm just really loving the like purple vibe these days. I'm really leaning into the purple. But yeah, I enjoy playing with this, but it's not a very versatile palette. Like it's a fun palette. It's not something that I would use on a day-to-day basis. Next up is this Makeup Revolution, or it's an I Heart Revolution palette. It's the Snow Globe Penguin palette. And this palette, quality-wise, not great. I'm just going to put that out there. Like, it's an okay quality-wise palette, but it's not great. Even in the swatches, I laugh. Like, the black doesn't swatch very black. However, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because you kind of just want a black to, like, deepen things up, not necessarily like be black. And having a black that's not super black to deepen things up is actually practical. But yeah, this palette is just kind of ho-hum. I don't really ever know what to do with it either. I don't feel like it's a very cohesive color story. And I thought I took more pictures, but I only took one picture of this palette, and I just used like, I think it was like this shade and these two shades. Like, it was just a very neutrally brown look. But I know I used like this deeper brown. Actually, I think it was this brown. I'm not sure. It's definitely like a more of a neutral color. There's definitely like two pinkier colors. I used those for sure in other looks. Like, I know I used this pink, and I know I used this at some point as well, but I think just mixed with other palettes. But yeah, it's kind of like it's a weird palette. Like, I don't like it, but I don't hate it. Like, I don't hate it, but the color story and the colors in it, like, the thing is, like, I wouldn't declutter this, though, because I love this packaging. So I could see myself depotting this and reusing this as, like, a magnetic palette if I could. I don't know how I would do that, but I would maybe potentially figure it out because I feel like it's worth it. And I feel like the outer packaging of this, like, I look at this and think it's going to be, like, icy and blue and wintry, and then you open it up and you're like, fall! Like, it doesn't mix for me. So for that, like, I don't love this palette, but I don't want to declutter it either. Like, it's not one that I would, like, I'm like, oh, just get rid of it because I'm never going to use it. It doesn't work as it is, the way it is. I'm going to talk about these two palettes at the same time because I kind of use them together for the most part, and I also use them, like, with other palettes, particularly this one. So just talking about the two looks that I did. The first look that I did, I definitely used like grays in this one on the outer, like, if I can open it, like somewhere in here in the mid-tone. I definitely used some of the mid-tone grays in this look. And then I used, these are hard to open without feeling like you're going to break your nail. I definitely used like the more peachy. These two colors on the end are not very pinky. They're more peachy, like champagne-y. So that was a very simple, easy, like everyday look. Like, this palette is definitely one that I could use like every day. It's good quality. It's not super pigmented, but it's not like dusty or something. Like, there's this color for sure. Like, I love this one color right here. I don't know, maybe if I can swatch it. I don't know how well it will show up, but it's this really pretty pinky iridescent. It doesn't even, I feel like I did this last update as well. It's just a really, really pretty shade. I used it quite a bit with other palettes as an inner corner highlight because it's a bit translucent, so it just sort of lifts things and adds like this extra like pretty little sparkle that I really, really like. So, I mean, I really enjoyed this palette. This palette I could, you know, take or leave. What was the other look that I did with this palette? I'm not sure off the top of my head what that one was. So yeah, so in that other palette I definitely used, or that other look I definitely used this sort of like I hope you can see it in the picture, this sort of like iridescent pretty sparkle. And I think I used a bit more of the deeper, I think I used this purpley gray, like it's purpley here, but it kind of comes off a bit grayish. Obviously it's a gray palette. I still am thinking about dismantling this palette. I feel like I didn't use it enough to determine what shades I could get rid of. I feel like there's redundancy in like these two are the same, and then these two are the same. Like I could probably get rid of, actually these two are more the same. Like I could get rid of some of the shades in this and not miss them. It was just figuring out what makes sense to get rid of, if that makes sense. But yeah, I enjoyed playing with both of these palettes because I feel like they're super easy to wear and super easy to use. They're just the right level of pigment that for an everyday purpose, it totally works. And then the last palette I want to talk about is the Urban Decay Urban Spectrum palette. So I did a Get Ready With Me with this palette. Oh, I don't want to lose the lid. Don't fall, don't fall. So yeah, beautiful palette, really fun to play with. The first look that I did with this, I just focused on these kind of like neutral shades just to do a neutral look, but then I threw in Prank as an eyeliner. So it kind of gave it a bit of a pop of color without with being super subtle. In the video, I focused on the purple row. I did everything in the purple row plus this like fuchsia pink, and I really enjoyed that look. It was really pretty. This flashback though, I was using that in my crease, and I feel like later in the day, that for some reason didn't stick on my eye. Like all the other colors were still there, but then I had this like weird faded spot, and I'm like, what happened there? That's weird. It didn't really stick like I thought it would or thought it should. Today I am wearing this palette. I'm wearing Madness in like the outer corner is the main blue color, and then I have Evidence as sort of like deepening, and then I have Bordello on the lid, and then a little bit of Flatline in the inner corner. So kind of a combination of like the pink and the blue, and I really enjoy that look as well. It gives it's an alternative because pink plus blue would kind of give you a bit of a purple. So it's like kind of the edges of the purple. So I don't know, I kind of liked the way that looked. Quality wise, this is so good. I mean, this palette is old. I know it's old. I don't care that my friend gave me an older palette. It doesn't bother me at all. But that quality is still there. Like it is such a good palette. The colors are really good. Is this a super versatile palette for me? Not really, because I'm realizing like how deep all of this is. And I talk about like, I'm not a super deep eyeshadow person because my eyes are so deep set. I feel like when I use really dark shadows, and they're like very different shapes, one is much bigger than the other. So one of the reasons why I don't do a halo eye, you notice I kind of do a similar eye style because it sort of distracts from that a little bit. If I do a halo eye, it's so obvious that they're very different sizes. But anyway, so yeah, I really enjoyed playing with this palette. I used it a little bit more than I was kind of hoping I could use it a little bit more, and I was able to. I just wasn't sure throwing it in with all these other palettes if I'd be able to get to use it, but I did. So yeah, it was overall a really good month. I had a lot of stuff to play with, but definitely I had a lot of pinks. I felt like it was a lot of pinks, and next month is gonna be similar. I clearly have a type. So speaking of next month, let's just get into the new palette picks. Okay, November palette picks. So how I do this is I sort of did the math at the beginning of the year and figured out that I needed to use about 50 eyeshadows a month to get through all of my palettes. So instead of selecting 5 palettes a month, it was like the total number of shadows need to equal 50. Well, I've added palettes like the Urban Decay Spectrum one over throughout the year, and it's kind of messed me up a little bit, and I'm realizing I realized when I started doing this month's picks that I have way too many palettes at the end and I'm not going to get through them all. So I did pull out a few that I'm not using. I have a rainbow type palette that's in that color workshop style. I'm just not going to bother using that. I have like a quad that's a cream quad. I did kind of play with it in the summertime a little bit as like an eyeshadow base, so I'm not pulling that one. I'm trying to think, there was something else. There was one other palette that I'm like, you know what? That one is probably just not going to get used, so we're just going to pull it out of the... the holiday, I had a Natasha Denona Holiday 5 pan. I've taken that apart. It's actually not in a palette anymore, so that one I'm not picking anymore. But I still have way too many. So this month is gonna be a little crazy. I've kind of stacked this month a little bit more and made December a little bit easier. And everything here was rouletted except for one. I kind of went back and pulled one so I could use it this month instead of December because I feel like I'm going to like it a bit more in November. So that palette is the Violet Voss Creme Brulee palette. It's a fun size palette. It's got 10 eyeshadows, but it's really tiny. I love the size of these. I've contemplated getting more of these. I remember liking the quality of this one. The issue with this one for me, though, is it's definitely very mid-toned. So again, there's nothing really bright and light to pull like a lighter color. But I definitely wanted to pull this for November because I feel like it's a little bit more... Kind of wish I pulled this in October or got picked in October because to me this is more like an October, like late September, October type palette. But I think it'll be fine for November as well. But I think I'll definitely mentally be past this by December. So I felt like this was a good time to pull this and make December a little bit lighter. Everything from here out was rouletted, and I talked about this in one of my previous videos that all the tiny palettes like hadn't been picked. So now we're doing all the tiny palettes and they're all the same. But maybe it's not a bad thing that I've got all these palettes together, especially, yeah, there's 4 of them here that I think are really interesting to compare against each other. So 2 of them, I just took the lids off so they're easier to hold. So 2 of them are the little Color Workshop quad. So this is the same brand as those other like longer eyeshadows. These came in a different kit. But the quality of these, again, from what I recall, are quite good. They're different kind of palettes, though. So I call this one the hot pink one, because they're the hot pink. And then I call this one the soft pink one, because they're all, like, soft pinks. This one has a couple sort of, like, toppery shades. So I think this shade here is very similar to the pink that I talked about in that other Color Workshop palette. And then this one, again, it's like an easy, soft kind of palette to wear. I feel like this one's like, it all sort of cohesively works together. And yeah, like I don't feel like getting rid of these because I like the quality of them. And they're fun and easy to use. So yeah, I've never really wanted to like get rid of them. I could see myself pulling these apart. I wonder what size these are in comparison to the, blanking on the name of the brand. Oh my god, I'm totally blanking on the name of the brand. I'm literally running through like brand names in my head. Viseart. Holy crap. Where did that go from? My Viseart. I'm curious to know. These are a similar size into the Viseart. Because it might be nice to, as much as these quads are super cute, the packaging is garbage. I wouldn't travel with these because I don't trust that the lids will stay on. Like the lids kind of fall off, but they also get stuck and it's super annoying. And it might be a good idea to like put these all together. I don't know. I have 3 or 4 of them. There's the gray one that I also kept. Maybe it's just the 3. I'm not sure. Anyway, so there's those 2. And then I have this guy. So the e.l.f. quad. This is the Rose Water quad. This was like a spontaneous purchase. And I talked about this sort of dupes the Rose Gold palette, which also is duped by, I forget what other palette I have. The CoverGirl True Naked Roses palette. Like they're all the same. They're all the same. I don't need all of them, but I have all of them. So yeah, so this little quad kind of, again, be interesting to compare it to those other 2. It's same but different. And then the other quad that kind of is really funny. And again, these were all, like the Roulette pulled all of these. This is the Charlotte Tilbury quad in Pillow Talk. So totally extreme opposite end of those 3. This one is like hella expensive. I bought this secondhand through Reddit, through like a makeup exchange. So yeah, it'll be fun to play with this, comparing it to those, because the other one that I have, the Dolce Vita one, the quality of that one, I'm kind of like, from what I remember, this one, I liked the quality of this one. So it'll be fun to just like compare, because like the price difference is so wildly different between these. Like those Color Workshop ones were like pennies for me. And then the e.l.f. one, they're like what, $3 or $4. And then this I think is like $50. Like it's so much more expensive. I'll have to look up the price. It might be $60 for these quads retail. So it'll be interesting to play with those. I also have a little duo. This lives in my palette world, but it's just a duo, so I don't know. I kind of should just throw this in with the singles because it's so silly to keep it with the others. But anyway, it's just this little tiny Shades by Sean. I think it's Sean, S-H-A-N. Ipsy, I want to say. Ipsy was this little guy. Again, I feel like this one was an okay duo. I can't remember the quality of this one though, so it'll be interesting to play with this. And again, I'm not going to do just like a look with this palette, this duo. I'm going to combine it with other stuff. So I feel like it's doable to use this. This might actually be a light enough shade to be paired with the Violet Voss. I'm not sure. I'll have to swatch. When I see the swatches, it is kind of a bit of a deeper shade, but it'll be interesting to see. Let me just, yeah, it's kind of a mid-tone, so it's not going to be a light enough shade to pull up that palette a bit for me. But anyway, so there's that guy. And then we have two bigger palettes. So the first bigger palette is the Shades of Roses palette. It's the Be Bella Cosmetics palette. I got this in a Try Beauty box. I'm not sure how I feel about using this palette this time of year, because again, it's definitely a Valentine's type palette, but it'll be fun to play with. I am definitely not using the glitter in this. I've used the glitter in this. I did a really cool look with like the red. Well, I thought it was cool with the red and I think it's on my Instagram, the glitter. And yeah, so again, this feels pretty redundant though with a lot of stuff that I've used, like with the purple and the hot pink and stuff, that I'm just kind of like, eh. I mean, I think it was a nice palette, but it does duplicate a lot of what I already have. It isn't as unique as I initially felt like it was. I mean, there's a couple shades. I think there's some uniqueness in here. There is definitely some uniqueness in this, like that red obviously is very unique to me. This purple color, I don't think I have one quite like this. And these shades have interesting textures. So like shade wise, it's maybe not wildly different, but it's definitely different. But yeah, it's just a palette that I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not vibing with it right now because it doesn't feel like the right time of year to use it. Is that weird? Am I weird like that? Maybe not. Let me know if you're like that. Like you really enjoy something, but then if it's not the right time of year, it's like, I don't like this because it's not the right time of year. This last palette also is not quite the right time of year for me, but I'm excited to play with this because I haven't really played a whole lot with it recently. Obviously not the whole year. This is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde. I have a really hard time saying that word and I have no idea why. Again, this is more spring-like to me. But I look at some of these shades and I get really jazzed to use them. Like this shade is really interesting. This shade, I know it's like a white, but I'm curious to play with it. The blues, the purples. The one thing that I do recall with this though, and that I don't like about it, is shades in here look a bit more neutral or cool leaning, yet I feel like everything from Huda Beauty turns pink. Like everything has a pink undertone to it, and I don't know why that is or how that is. I feel like it just goes more pink than I think it's going to go. So yeah, I'm excited to play with this, but again, maybe not quite the right time of year. I'm more excited about this than the Shades of Roses, although the more I'm thinking about the Shades of Roses, I'm warming up to it because it's a bit deeper. I should maybe try and pair them together because there's not like really any deep colors in this. Yeah, maybe that'll work. I think I'm going to really try and play. This next month, I might not have a whole lot of photos of like an individual palette. I think I'm just going to do a lot of mixing and matching and playing. Makes it hard to take photos because then I like have to keep track of what eyeshadows I use, and I might not do that. I might just do like random photos next month and not so many like this is this distinct eyeshadow palette. We'll see. Half the time I mean to take photos and then I totally forget as well. So that happens too. Anyway, I hope you like this Pan That Palette update. I'm really enjoying this project. I can't believe I'm getting through pretty much all of my eyeshadow palettes. We have 1 month to go after this, and obviously I didn't know what palettes are for next month, so the one palette is so funny that it ended up being in December because to me it's mentally a December palette, so I think I've always used it in December, or like pretty much most of the time I've had it. That's the month that I use it. So stay tuned for that. If you liked this video, feel free to give a little thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel here in Toronto, Canada. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye.